Hello, hello. What is up? What is good? We are reading the new chapter of One Piece a couple days late, which is not ideal. Just been busy, but whatever. Let's get to it. The chapter title is The Birth of Loki 1153. This motherfucker is joining the crew. I am more and more convinced of that by the day. Oops, the page display isn't popping up. On the cover story here, we have a lovely reunion of Yamato. Sure. These are the people that live in Ringo. Yeah, the snowy place where Zoro was attacked and learned the history of his swords and stuff. This is the woman from there, and Ocho, the matron. Sure. I think I'm due for a Wano reread, by the way. I think I'm rereading Akane Banashi right now, but maybe after that finishes, I'll tackle the mighty epic of Wano. So, I had this entire time been saying, okay, I kind of foresee the arc of Elbaf happening like this. We have the immediate crisis of the Holy Knights, but then once that's taken care of and things have settled down a little bit, we're going to shift gears, learn about the history of Elbaf, learn about this tragedy of King Harold, and why Loki was truly imprisoned and all of that stuff. And I was totally wrong. Not only did we get the mid-combat flashback that I was pretty sure wouldn't happen, nope, that did happen, and to make myself even wronger, not only are we getting a flashback, but we are actually having a flashback within a flashback now. We had a short framing sequence of the day that Loki appeared in King Harold's court and saw all of the giants attacking him. The truth of that harrowing incident. But as soon as that was teased, we leapt even further back, way further back, to before Loki was even born, when a young King Harold was rampaging across the seas. Shifting from, this being a depiction of what Loki was saying to Hadridan to a fan service backstory, a backstory that's for the benefit of the readers. That now this is just sort of the omnipotent narrator showing us these events, such that we can really understand the context of who Harold was and stuff. And it looks like he is going to be another rapscallion that goes through some sort of significant journey and arc. But what I wanted to call out was something that I kind of skimmed over in my excitement and didn't really recognize the significance of until I saw some comments talking about it, and then I kind of understood, which is there's the scene where Shanks is hanging out with Scopper Gaban, and Scopper calls him a child of fate, and then he grabs his arm, and I don't know, I was just having an off day. My knowledge of One Piece and general logic and the flow of time failed me, and I was like, oh, they're referring to the fact that he lost his arm saving Luffy. I think I said that out loud, which is embarrassing, but at least I thought that, which is very embarrassing as well. Obviously, chronologically, that makes, not much sense. Is that right? Or no? Wait, let's review. Now I'm getting confused. Now I've actually, torn myself into knots a little bit. Because I don't remember the order in which this happened. Okay, what? Yeah, never mind. Yeah, okay. No. I'm right. He's got both his arms. I hadn't really thought this through. What does he say exactly? We're looking at the previous chapter here now. I thought he calls Shanks like a child of fate or something. Yeah. Don't bother thinking over the tricky little things. Okay. But yeah, Shanks has both arms. I I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I don't know. I was like, I, but yeah, he has both arms. Of course, soon after he meets Luffy in the very first chapter, his arm is bitten off by a large sea beast, whom Luffy then punches out, which creates, you know, a strange kind of like logical inconsistency. And the explanation that I had accepted this entire time is like, well, Oda didn't realize, he didn't consider the fact that he might want to make Shanks ultra powerful sometime later on. And he wanted this tearful moment of sacrifice and blah, blah, blah. And then later he decided, ooh, let's bring Shanks back into the story. Let's make him somebody like super relevant to the whole length of the series, an endgame type figure. And therefore he has to be really, really strong. Okay, so if he's that strong, then why did some random frickin' Seamook that Luffy punched out in the very, like, later that chapter, after just aging up to a teenager, not really being that strong yet, how the heck did Shanks get his arm bitten off? Well, maybe Shanks wanted to have his arm bitten off. Which, I don't know, that kind of sounds ridiculous, but, like, it's like something like that. There's maybe some sort of curse put upon Shanks, represented by this mysterious tattoo, and we also saw that the members of the Holy Knights were able to use some sort of tattoo abyss technology in order to warp themselves from place to place. It all seems interconnected, it all seems linked. So it could be something like Shanks was bound by a curse of that tattoo that could only be removed in a moment of like genuine sacrifice. It wasn't like he could just lob his own arm off or go to the doctor and say, hey, can you laser out my tattoo? I don't know. We've been rambling about this for a while. I want to get to the chapter. I just wanted to acknowledge that I had like totally missed that and totally misunderstood that. I've been taking some L's lately. Totally miscalled what the structure of the Elbaf arc would be, and then totally missed what was going on in that Shanks scene. But whatever, we'll try to regain our dignity here. Let's read about the birth of Loki. Now I'm putting all the chips on Loki joins the crew. Prince Harold of Elbaf lived out his rather unhinged childhood years alongside Dory and Broggy. Alright, cool, yeah. Thanks to his innate size and strength, gifts from his ancient giant blood, as well as his noble status, he developed an inflated sense of self, and nobody could stop him from growing into a royal pain. So here he is, picking his nose in a matter very akin to Luffy. But some villainous characters do that too. That is definitely like a One Piece consistent signal, though, of a type of personality, is picking one's nose. Flicking his snot and it causing an explosion, just like Mr. Five, I believe, way back in the day, but different. Okay. Marvel at the 10-meter tall woman. Feel the earth tremble as she walks. Exotic. Oh, they've captured a giant and they're using her in a sideshow. I like this shot of the people panicking and stuff. It recalls the scene in King Kong where they bring King Kong out in front of the bougie audience and they freak out. Loki, of course, pissed off by this. But the way that she's going, "Grar," I think she probably might be, like, enjoying it. Because obviously she's not an inarticulate savage. She's got language and cognitive abilities and stuff. So she must be playing it up for the crowd. Okay, so they raise the whole frickin' town to the ground. Get this girl back. The King of Elbaf. I won't stand to see my homeland disrespected like that. Bam! Smacked. Now this is interesting. They're making Harold out to be... He's in a gray area. I genuinely don't know where they're going to go with this character. Normally, when you get a character like this introduced in One Piece, you can kind of predict the arc. You can kind of predict how empathetic they want this character to ultimately be. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's just a sign of good, kind of consistent characterization and setting things up for the long haul so that later you're not meant to be like, that guy was like a fucking jerk. Why are we supposed to like him now? But always kind of riding that line where you have that option later. Here, yeah, it could really go either way, and especially because King Harold's role in the story is still unclear to me. Like, I'm pretty convinced that he did something heinous, something that involved selling out to the world government, which is, of course, such a betrayal of his ideology now. But I think we're ultimately meant to maybe feel sympathetic for him when he does that, because he's presented now as so goofy. So many likable qualities. Need to apologize. So many people were hurt back there. That mini kingdom of tiny humans. They saved my life when I washed up on shore. Ah. Nice, yeah. Just because you happen to be born huge and are coincidentally strong and brutish, you actually think that makes you better than humans? So everybody thinks all giants are barbaric and brutish as Elbaf. Well, little missy, you're not helping either. With your goofy sideshow act where you go, grrr. But she's got a point. She was just clowning around and making some bucks. These guys are actually tearing down kingdoms. That's why people believe her act. Just because I was born huge. Alright, so they do go back. He's won over. Could this be Loki's mom, by the way? We're gonna get the revelation that his face is much like her kind of silly face. That's why he bandages it up. Or maybe that's not why he bandages it up. But that'll be a fun revelation when the bandages come down, is that he, instead of his dad's kind of harsh, cool vibes, besides when he got slapped, he's got his mom's kind of goofy, friendly face. Alright. He has a change of heart. Go help out the tiny humans. Ah, so this starts to put the inkling into the minds of the giants that maybe collaboration, cultural exchange. It's not the worst thing that there's people out there that have ideas that they don't, even though they're tiny and their brains are tiny. These humans are more skilled than we realize. Cool. Wow, he bows down to the king. Unreal. It's been a revelatory experience for Harold. Nothing in the world is meant to be destroyed. I was born on Samwani Island in the South Pacific. Ah, so she's not even a giant. She's a giant, but she's not an Elbaf giant. So you cross the Serpent of Blood, the red line. Not as barbaric as you say. Mistaken about you too. Yeah, the romance is in the air. I like the scene of them lying down and like checking out the perspective of humans, because the humans are obviously like hostile to them, and they're like, oh, how cute. What are these guys doing? But here Harold endears himself by hauling up a big shark for humans to eat. 105 years ago, they sail back to Elbaf. Check it out. We still got the big sword. What's up with the big sword? And we got the mysterious Heaven's Lair, which you can say, I don't think there's anybody up there. It doesn't look like it's civilized, but I think it's covered in clouds, and the tree becomes this kind of ethereal white at the top. I think there's something up there, dude. I think there's something up there. Anyways, okay, Harold comes back, atones for all his countless crimes, only to join hands with our neighbors and ask them to teach us their culture. If we learn from the rest of the world, we can make our land and lives richer. Cordial with him. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. That it's like we knew from the start that the giant pirates were like feared and used to be the ultimate terror of the seas. And then it's kind of like, you know, the contrast, the juxtaposition of that reputation and then the actual personalities of Dory and Bragi, which are like goofy and friendly and fun. They're just some big roly-poly giants. And it's like, okay, so how did they get the reputation? Because you can't really picture Dory and Bragi raising hell like that. It was Harold. Dory and Bragi always were kind of Luffy-esque pirates, I suppose, only fighting greater evils and certainly showing no regard for the law or order, but not intentionally making people's lives worse either. Doesn't hurt they can fight, of course, but if they pose too much threat to the other nations, we may have to rein them in. Wow. Now, this was 105 years ago, so very soon they're going to rein themselves in by fighting non-stop. The reason for our fight is long forgotten, one of the great immortal lines of early One Piece. Here we can see the true old chieftains. The one that gets killed by Big Mom is still here. I can't remember his name, but there's Ja Rule without the sword in his head. I gotta like really kind of sort through the timeline in my head because we're seeing a lot of things from a lot of different times. It's not really complicated, and it's not any more complicated than it needs to be, but it's enough that I'm like, okay, like I gotta at least kind of put them in a sequence in my mind. Elbaf is blessed with good luck. Sending diplomats back and forth, we can help deepen the ties between... Wow. He's taking hostages. Nice, nice, yeah. All kind of 101 nation building stuff. Whoa. Fisherman village. They're having a baby. Forbidden from marrying him. The royal line must remain pure of blood. Okay, so this is when Hadruden is born. Okay. Right. Hadruden is the older brother. I always forget that because Loki's bigger. Okay, I had that backwards. So this is Hadruden's mom. Nice, yeah. And he's kind of the bastard child, which is part of his massive complex with Loki. Harald, of course, still being an upstanding guy, handles this as best as he can. And then here, Estrid. Now, of course, the juxtaposition here is obvious. Oda busted out his sexy lady face for this one. We've seen this face before. We know what this is meant to convey. And she's got the big booba and the tiny waist and everything. Sure. Estrid's blood is pure and ancient. She is the one worthy of being our king. Okay, so this shadowy council here. Who are these guys, by the way? I think at first you could think, oh, this is just kind of a representation of the elite of Elbaf in general. You know, the old-fashioned ways, those that revere tradition. But, like, really, though, who are those guys? Because we know, like, most of the individuals in power of Elbaf. We know the giant chieftains, Dory and Bragi. We know Ja Rule and the other guy, who are, like, the tribal leaders. We know Harold, who's the king. So it's like, who are these shadowy figures that are coming in to say, no, you are forbidden from marrying him? Are they perhaps coming from upstairs? From the heavens lair? Are they yet on another tier of revered ancient heroes that have been retired from public appearance? Because, like, who are they, man? She is the one worthy of being our king. Or are they meant to be more like miscreants among the general giant populace who themselves have no actual power or influence, but just represent the constituents of Elbaf that would be like no, we refuse this commoner who came from outside of Elbaf to be our queen. Okay, well, we have to keep you guys in line. I don't know, it's very odd. And notice that the silhouettes are consistent between the two of these. They may represent individuals. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. It's exciting, isn't it? We're excited here, folks. Okay. Spirit is escaping to the east here. Good luck is getting away. We must close those windows at once. So she's like super superstitious. I guess this is part of her study of geomancy, or maybe it's legit. I don't know. It's a fantasy world. Asla, a horse of good fortune. Give my clan the perfect mount for you, King Harold. Horse will bring you great luck. The enormous eight-legged horse. This, of course, is from actual Nordic myth. Who rode that horse? I don't remember, but it's a famous horse in Nordic myth that has 8 legs. It's badass. Bring all the jewelry and gold and the treasury to my chambers. Fortunes of wind and earth and set in his majesty's direction. Yeah, she just seems to like luxury. I don't know. I'm suspicious of this woman with her sexy face. Okay, about 70 years ago, in the era when the rigors of the sea made it difficult to maintain trade between islands, Elbaf's skill at navigation was the envy of other nations. Aha, so this is Elbaf sharing this knowledge. I think we'd heard this before, that the giants were the most skilled navigators. I think it was offered as an explanation for how the giants ended up at Little Garden. Since at the time, One Piece was very adherent to its idea of, like, you only go forward, you can't go backwards. That's how the Grand Line works. But then it's like, oh, these people just seem to be able to go wherever they want. Is it because they're huge? No, they're great navigators. Sharing the story of going to Fishman Island. The birth of Neptune, who is, of course, the current king of the sea. All creatures of the sea, not just the mermaids and fishmen, were engaged in a grand celebration that spanned the seafloor. Oh, I wish we got to see that. This sounds awesome. Okay. Now, I had thought before, hey, you know, these sorts of flashbacks, often Oda likes to use the opportunity to be like, okay, if we're placing this flashback like 70 years before the main story, what else was happening at that time that we can kind of get into? Which, of course, with Odin's flashback, there was some pretty crazy events, like Roger getting to Laugh Tale. Here, so far, pretty restrained. But maybe that's more for after Loki is born, his life of destiny, meeting rocks and everything. But this is a little example of it, is all I'm saying. It looks like they're sailing into Wano here as well at some point. In the top right panel. So it's like, yeah, we're getting the idea that he's a man of influence around the world. Okay. So, Harold was away from home when the queen gives birth. Very healthy boy. His name is Loki. Whoa! So this is the reveal of Loki's face. His weird, demonic eyes. His baby horns. The queen freaks out. Tells the kingdom that it was stillborn. Just look at that baby. It's a monster. Yeesh. Okay. The Prince of Elbaf gasped for the empty air, but no hands reached out to envelop his own. The most unfortunate of all living creatures is the one whose very existence is denied by its mother in the moment of its birth. Wow. Dude, Loki's joining the crew, man. How can somebody have a backstory this tragic and not join the crew? I never want to bear another child. They threw the baby is down in the underworld. What about the underworld? Wow, Loki climbing back up. Oh, all of the misfortunes that would fall upon Elbaf would be known as Loki's curse. Dang. Dude, this imagery of baby Loki climbing up the side of the tree. This motherfucker's joining the crew, man. I'm all in. I'm all in on that. New big ship, Loki and the crew. Those are my new Elbaf predictions. We'll see. We'll see. Crazy flashback. Poor Loki. He's a cute little baby. He just looks a little demonic. It's okay. He's just a little demonic. He's just an ancient giant. All right. Let's look forward to next week. What a crazy month of chapters. I'm excited to talk about them at more length, or not really at more length, but talk about them in aggregate during the monthly Shonen Jump wrap-up video, which I will also work on shortly, but as I said, busy. Okay, see ya.